In the far reaches of the world, nestled deep beyond the hills and rivers, lay a forest untouched by time. The evergreen forest, where every tree stood tall and proud, cloaked in robes of emerald that never faded, even in winter. It was a forest of peace, of quiet breath and slow drifting dreams. People whispered its name with reverence, for it was said to be alive, not just with wildlife, but with memory and magic. The sun had long dipped beneath the horizon when the first stars began to prick the sky. A silvery mist curled around the trunks of ancient firs, and the air grew still, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. And there, beneath the tallest pine, one older than any living creature, lay a clearing. Smooth stones circled a bed of moss, and the moon cast its light across the scene like a mother tucking in a child. This was the heart of the evergreen forest, and it was here that the forest whispered its dreams. Long, long ago, before people built towns or carved roads, the evergreen forest was watched over by a guardian, Elowen. She was not a queen, nor a witch, but something between. With hair like woven ivy, and eyes that glimmered with morning dew, Elowen could speak to the trees and understand the rhythm of the wind. Birds would perch on her shoulders. Foxes would nap at her feet. Even the oldest of oaks would lean slightly in her direction, as if listening for her voice. Every evening, Elowen would walk through the forest, barefoot and quiet, her steps stirring petals and releasing scents of pine and sweet fern into the cool air. She knew the names of every living thing, not just their names, but their stories too. The rabbit who had once outrun a storm, the frog who sang lullabies to the stars, the tree that grew sideways because it longed to touch a stream. To her, the forest was a grand family, and she its gentle guardian. But this evening was different. The clouds above the trees moved slower. The crickets chirped in lower tones, and even the owl on the crooked branch of the sycamore did not hoot. Elowen felt it too. The forest was winding down, not in fear, not in sadness, but in rest, a deep, eternal rest. She paused at the edge of the glade, gazing at the mossy circle beneath the ancient pine. It was here that the forest held its most sacred memories, not just of creatures and trees, but of time itself. She knelt and touched the moss with her fingertips. It was cool and yet pulsing gently, like the quiet heartbeat of the world. As the moon rose higher, casting shadows like soft silk over the leaves, Elowen began to hum, a tune older than language, a melody passed from wind to wind, tree to tree, leaf to leaf. The forest listened. The branches swayed in a rhythm slow and tender. Even the small rocks seemed to settle in for the song. And as she sang, something stirred. A shimmer, barely noticeable, rippled across the glade. Out from the mist came shapes, not threatening but graceful. Spirit-like figures formed from starlight and memory. Some looked like deer made of moonbeams, others like birds glowing faintly blue. They circled the clearing in silence, their movements like water flowing through the dark. Elowen smiled. These were the ancient ones, the first memories of the forest. Every century they awoke, not to speak, but to listen, to hear how the forest had grown, what it had weathered, and what stories it carried now. This, she knew, would be her final song to them. So she stood, Raising her arms, she let her voice carry higher, softer, floating like smoke. The melody bent around tree trunks and danced along the grass. She sang of the day the waterfall froze in midair for a single breath of winter. She sang of the tiny fox cub who barked at the stars until they blinked in reply. She sang of the lost traveler who had followed a crow's call and found his way home. And the forest, in turn, rustled and echoed her memories in return. The night deepened. Stars swirled in spirals above the canopy. The spirits slowed their dance, bowing their luminous heads. It was time. Eloan walked to the center of the mossy ring. She lay down on the soft earth, her hair fanning out like ivy across the ground. She folded her hands over her chest and exhaled slowly, not in sorrow, not in pain, but in peace. The forest wrapped her in a hush. Vines gently curled over her feet. Ferns swayed in farewell, and the trees whispered her name with the wind. Eloan, Eloan, Eloan. But she did not vanish. She became the forest. The next morning, when the sun yawned and stretched its golden arms through the trees, the clearing shimmered faintly. Where once lay a woman now grew a sapling, its leaves soft and silvery, swaying with a rhythm not its own, but of all who had come before. Animals came to the glade that day. Birds nested nearby. Rabbits paused to listen. And every evening after, when the moon cast its silver light, a faint humming could be heard, soft and slow, like the breath of a guardian asleep beneath the soil. And the forest rested, not because it had ended, but because it had begun anew. Let your breath soften, your eyelids grow heavy. The evergreen forest is quiet now, holding you in its memory, wrapping you in stories, letting you rest, just as it rests. There's no need to hurry. The night is long, and the forest eternal. Sleep now, and let the whispers of the trees guide your dreams. Settle back, breathe slowly. Let your thoughts drift like morning mist across the trees. We return now to the evergreen forest, where silence is sacred and time flows gently as a stream through mossy stone. Many seasons had passed since Eloan became one with the forest. Spring had returned again and again, with soft rain and the scent of blooming wildflowers. Summers glowed golden as ever, lighting up the canopy with a soft warmth that kissed every branch. And through every passing year, the sapling at the center of the clearing had grown, slowly, patiently, reaching toward the stars above, rooted in the memory of the earth below. No one tended it, yet it never withered. No one watered it, yet it never thirsted. The forest itself cared for Eloan's tree, cradling it like a memory too precious to fade. It was said that if you sat beneath its silver leaves long enough, you could hear a soft hum, like a song carried on wind and woven through time. Only a few travelers had ever heard it. Fewer still had truly understood. One such traveler was a boy named Corin. He was small, with curious eyes and a quiet spirit. The village he came from lay many miles away, just beyond the ridge of the Sleepwalker Hills. The people there spoke often of the evergreen forest, but only in hushed tones, as though saying its name too loudly would awaken something ancient. Most avoided the forest's edge. But Corin was different. From the time he was very young, He had always felt drawn to the trees, as if something inside him remembered something just beyond the leaves. One misty morning, when the dew still clung to blades of grass and the birds were only beginning to stir, Corin slipped quietly from his home. He carried only a small satchel, a piece of bread, and a worn book of stories. His feet led him down a path half covered in fallen leaves, beneath arching branches and into the stillness of the forest. At first, he walked quickly. The sounds of his village faded behind him, replaced by the hush of wind in the pines. Then his pace slowed. The deeper he went, the softer everything became. Birdsong melted into the whisper of leaves. Even his own heartbeat seemed quieter, as though the forest was gently cradling it. Hours passed, or perhaps it was only moments. Time in the evergreen forest was not quite the same. Eventually, he came to a stream, barely wider than his arm. Its waters were so clear he could see smooth pebbles at the bottom, glistening like forgotten jewels. A deer watched him from across the bank, unafraid, as though it recognized him. Corin bowed slightly, a habit from one of the stories his grandmother had read to him. The deer blinked slowly, then turned and disappeared into the mist. He followed the stream without really thinking, letting its path guide him. The further he walked, the more the air changed. It grew cooler, sweeter, as if each breath carried the scent of memories. Eventually, he reached a clearing, the very same glade that lay beneath the oldest pine, the same place where Elowen had once sung her last lullaby to the spirits of the forest. Corin stepped into the circle, and the silver-leafed tree shimmered before him. He felt in that moment as if he had walked not forward, but backward into a memory. The wind shifted gently, curling around him like a blanket. He sat beneath the tree, not knowing what he expected, but knowing it was where he needed to be. Silence fell, not an empty silence, but a full one, like the pause between verses of a lullaby when the song still echoes in your heart. Then the tree hummed, just faintly at first, a note here, a sigh there. Corin closed his eyes. The hum became a melody, a gentle song without words. It felt familiar, like the stories he'd been told at bedtime, like the warmth of a hand once held. His breath slowed, his thoughts quieted, and he dreamed. In his dream, he was not a boy, but a tree. His feet were roots. His arms were branches. He swayed with the wind and drank in the sun. He listened to the birds nesting in his limbs and sheltered foxes curled at his base. He knew without question that he belonged here. When he woke, the sun had dipped low behind the trees. The glade glowed golden, and the air shimmered as if stitched with magic. Corin stood slowly, placing a hand on the trunk of the tree. "Thank you," he whispered. The wind replied with a soft rustle, and a single silver leaf floated down, landing gently in his hand. He carried it home. When he returned to the village, he said nothing at first. But something in him had changed. He no longer rushed. He listened more. He spoke more kindly. And sometimes, when the stars were bright and the air was quiet, he would sing softly to the trees outside his window. Others noticed. They asked where he had gone, what he had seen. Corin would only smile and say, "The forest remembered me." And so, in quiet ways, the forest's whisper continued. Through the silver leaf, he kept safe in a wooden box. Through the songs, he taught the children. Through the trees, he planted near the river. Elowen's lullaby, still alive, still growing, still resting. Now, take a slow breath. Imagine the silver tree swaying gently in the moonlight. Let its melody carry you, softly, slowly, into your own dreams. There is no rush here. The forest is eternal, and you are safe within it. The forest awaits. The moon has risen high over the treetops, and a silver hush lies over the world. Let your thoughts soften. Let your breath slow. Let the final whispers of the evergreen speak to your heart, like a lullaby meant only for you. Many years had passed since Corin's first journey into the evergreen forest. He had grown into a gentle man with silver at his temples and quiet strength in his hands. The village loved him. They called him the Song Keeper, though he had never asked for titles. He simply listened to the wind, to the trees, to the quiet stories people didn't know they were telling. And every year, on the same day in early spring, he would disappear before dawn, walking the forest path alone. No one asked where he went. They all understood, even if they couldn't explain why. One year, however, Corin did not return by nightfall, or the next day, or the one after that. Some grew worried. Others waited with quiet patience. He had always come back before, always, with a soft smile and a leaf or stone or song as a gift. But this time, the path remained empty. In the forest, far beyond the last fallen log and the final twist of the stream, the silver-leafed tree stood taller than ever. It reached high into the sky, glowing faintly with moonlight. And at its roots, nestled in moss and shadow, sat Corin, peaceful, still, his eyes closed as though in a dream. He was not cold. He was not lost. The forest had called him home, just as it had called Elowen so long ago. The trees around him swayed softly, forming a protective circle. The air shimmered with warmth. The creatures of the forest gathered, rabbits, foxes, owls, deer, each sitting silently, as if paying tribute. And then the tree began to hum again. Not just a whisper this time, but a low, layered melody, a harmony of wind and memory, root and rain, bark and breath. The forest was singing, of beginnings and endings, of arrivals and returns. Corin's spirit rose with the song, not leaving, but becoming the hush between heartbeats, becoming the rustle of pine needles, becoming the starlight that filtered down through branches. His satchel, still beside him, carried only one thing, a new story he had written, a final tale, titled simply, Whispers of the Evergreen. Not long after, the villagers began to notice something strange. The trees near the village began to hum faintly at dusk. Children dreamed of silver leaves and glowing paths. Strangers arrived saying they'd been drawn by a song they couldn't name. And those who walked into the forest found themselves walking more slowly, breathing more deeply, thinking less, and feeling more. A new tree began to grow at the forest's edge, young and slender, with a single silver leaf shining at its tip. No one planted it. No one tended it. Yet it grew, because the evergreen forest never forgets. Eloan's lullaby still echoed in the wind. Corin's voice joined hers, soft and steady. Together, their songs became part of the land, of the silence, of the sleep that heals and holds. Now, when the moon is high and the world is quiet, the trees seem to whisper a single, simple promise. You are not lost. You are not alone. You are safe here. Rest now. And so the story ends, not with a goodbye, but with a breath, a silence, a stillness, the kind that comes just before the deepest, gentlest dreams. Let yourself fall into that stillness now. Let the whispers of the forest cradle you. The trees are watching. The song continues. Sleep well, dear dreamer. You are home.